And welcome to Candidates Corner on LPTV, a production of the Libertarian Party and Libertarian National Committee. Whitney Bilyeu serving as chair. As always, John Gapso on the big board. I'm your host, Pat Ford. It is a singular honor to join you every week as we begin to enter the field of battle for both the 2021 off year and 2022 midterm elections. As always, we've got 3 or 4 real focuses on an evening like tonight. We want to give the libertarian community an opportunity to meet our wonderful down ballot candidates. We want to challenge them to incorporate what we call lunch pail issues, ordinary life issues, into their campaign, but looking at them through a libertarian perspective. We all love Austrian economics. We all love our statement of principles. We all love our libertarian philosophy. But more so than ever, Americans are concerned with issues like education, inflation, job security, and of course, COVID. Finally, we want to establish it within the libertarian community worldwide that candidates from around the country all serve an equal purpose and a sense of equal importance to each other. That every single candidate who runs for office, regardless of whether it's a local community board or the United States Senate, they all bring with them an opportunity to educate the public on the libertarian philosophy, the statement of principles, what we mean as a movement. And as we always say, for many folks, these candidacies may very well be the first time not only meeting a libertarian candidate, but perhaps even meeting a libertarian. It's an unparalleled opportunity in today's body politic, where folks clearly not only are disappointed, but quite frankly disgusted in the duopoly and the lack of solutions they provide and their overarching presence in our life, regardless of whether they're red or blue. Now is the time for us to take our movement out to the world. A couple of housekeeping notes, if you will. There are some amazing events going on this weekend. Reporting primarily in the Northeast tonight. Connecticut Liberty Fest is going to be held actually in Meriden, Connecticut, Sunday, starting at about noon. And you know what? It's an astonishing event. First of all, from a speaker's perspective, Joe Jorgensen is going to be there. Larry Sharp will be there speaking, as well as other folks from the Liberty Movement. Multiple bands, food trucks, stuff for the kids to do. They're calling it a day of music, speakers, and connecting for liberty in the Constitution State. So Meriden, Connecticut is sort of about halfway between the New York border and Hartford. It's an easy ride from just about anywhere in New England. It's right off the Merritt Parkway. I commend this to everyone's attention if they're within driving distance. Go out, spend a couple hours, and support the folks in Connecticut. Now, tomorrow night at 5 o'clock in New Rochelle, New York, it's an evening with Larry Sharp for the benefit of the Libertarian Party of New York. I'll be there. I hope you will be too. And I want to remind folks, if you're holding major events, money bombs, let us know. We'll put them in the crawl. We'll get them on the Libertarian Party Facebook page. We'll do everything we can to amplify the efforts of candidates, constituencies, and of course, our great affiliates from around the nation, whether they be at the state level, the county, the municipality, the village level. It's all critically important that we be on our A game as we enter this election season. Joining us tonight, we've got someone from New York City. Yes, New York City, from Brooklyn. From where I'm from, you still call it Crooklyn. Yes. Yes, I'm a boomer. All right. But joining us is Matt Morgan. He's running for the city council of the great city of New York. If you're from my perspective, yes, the New York Yankees are the best professional sports team in America. And cities like Boston and Providence and Philadelphia are lovely suburbs of New York and should be enjoyed as such. Matt, thanks for joining us tonight. Yes, New York City is the cradle of civilization. It is everything important about life. And on those rare occasions when Gangrene or Big Blue loses, well, we just point to, well, the importance of everything else we do in New York. So I just want to put that out there. And by the way,
the game on in the background.
Excellent. And by the way, for the record, who's beaten the New England Patriots and Tom Brady twice? Yes, the New York Football Giants are 2-0 against some guy named Brady. I'm not quite sure what the attraction is. But listen, thanks for joining us tonight. Let's give us if you will, a little bit about yourself. What we always define as that libertarian moment when you decided that yes, you were a libertarian. That moment of the light bulb went up above your head. Give us a little background on what motivates you to run for New York City Council.
So where should we start? So basically, when I graduated college, I started out as a stockbroker. You ever seen the movie Boiler Room? It was kind of like that.
Yes, I have.
On Long Island. Wasn't really my thing, but I fell in love with finance because of it. And then I kept doing. I made a YouTube show called Mo Money, discussing investing for millennials, economic topics, and how they. And then through that, I started realizing more and more. Wow, I'm starting to realize the government really is playing a part in all these things that I'm talking about. And then through there, I discovered Milton Friedman, and I was like, man, I love this guy. The way he talks, he doesn't pander to people. He just says what he says, and it makes a lot of sense. And then from there, I just kind of fell into Gary Johnson, and I loved Gary Johnson. And then I moved to Brooklyn in 2016, and then I discovered the Brooklyn LP. I joined them, and then I am now the chair of the Brooklyn Libertarian Party. And then we feel it's important to put candidates on the ballot. And, I'm usually a very shy person, but I can also be very outgoing. And I was like, well, I'll do it. I'll run for city council. And here I am.
How many districts roughly are there in the New York City Council? And talk about the relationship between the council, the mayor. New York City mayors are obviously typically larger than life characters, except for the last one, who is
dull.
You're being kind. The word I was looking for was dullard. Maybe the worst mayor in the history of the city of New York, and I'm talking about multiple constituencies agree on that. His only support for running for the presidency actually came from desperate New Yorkers who were willing to do anything, even make him president if he meant he would go away. Words don't usually fail me, as anyone who watches this show from time to time will tell you, but the depths of his inanity, banality, and the condition that he has left the city of New York in is astonishing. And I literally lived through the David Dinkins administration and Abe Beam. All right. So that's saying something. So give us a little snapshot of New York politics and how the city council works, and the mayor and the borough presidency. You got all sorts of government there.
Yeah. So there's 52 city council districts, and I imagine that's gonna stay the same. 2 years they're doing because of the census, they're redistricting, but I imagine it'll remain 52 districts. So the city council is kind of like the House of Representatives. It's like Congress. They make present bills, and then they present it to the mayor, and then the mayor signs it into law. Then you got borough presidents, which really is just like they don't do anything. They kind of weigh in on certain issues in the borough, but they don't really have much power. They have the authority to make decisions on land use decisions. That's really their only power. But I think it's a super important power, especially with the housing crisis, which is something that I talk about a lot. So yeah, besides that, and then you got your massive bureaucracy. And I don't know what those guys do.
and of course, talk to us about Brooklyn. Brooklyn obviously is larger than life for everyone, and in reality, it's larger than life. I personally, I was born in the greater New York metropolitan area, as I like to say, on the wrong side of the Holland Tunnel. And by the way, there's a term called bridge and tunnels. I don't know if it's still in use, but it was. It was in the 80s, and it is a pejorative. It is not a compliment. And and bridge and tunnels are people who had to go through a bridge or a tunnel to get to New York City, whether it be Staten Island, any one of the boroughs, and which meant you are from Jersey, and but it was growing up. Manhattan was the epicenter, particularly Lower Manhattan. If you were a youngin', Greenwich. By the time I was growing up, Greenwich Village had already faded. And it's a real study in the life cycles of a city, because periodically there's an ebb and flow in between neighborhoods and boroughs. And growing up in the 80s and 90s, of course, if you were into the punk lifestyle, there was nothing like the West Village, St. Mark's Place, places like CB's and Danceteria and Max's, the Ritz, ultimately clubs like that. And then, of course, that began to change. And just like Greenwich Village, it becomes sort of a tourist trap. Soho and Tribeca and Lower Manhattan became, the denizen of folks, well, like me. And then if people like me started showing up, that sort of ruined the whole edginess. And ultimately, I've watched Brooklyn evolve. And Brooklyn is an astonishingly complicated place. So give us a little layout of the neighborhoods in this section of Brooklyn, and particularly where the big D39 occupies.
Yeah, so a lot of people, in the past 10, 20 years, started moving to Brooklyn because they were priced out of Manhattan. I think the most people, I saw something, the most people that left Manhattan, everyone's like, oh, they went to Florida. No, they went to Brooklyn. So the people were fleeing, and they were looking for, more spacious place to socially distance, and they came to Brooklyn. Brooklyn's very large. The district I'm in, it's a rather wealthy area, Park Slope. That's where Bill de Blasio has his residence. He works out at the YMCA down the street. He takes a motorcade every day from the Upper East Side all the way to Park Slope, which chaps a lot of people's butts because it's a waste of taxpayer resources. And, you claim to be caring about the environment. Get on the subway, it'll be faster. But yeah, it's a beautiful neighborhood. It's famous for the old brownstones. And then, it's a pretty good mix of small businesses, and it's just a great place to live. And I really like it here. The real hot topic issue is about 500 feet from me, which is the Gowanus Canal, which is one of the most polluted bodies of water in America. It's a super fund. They're currently cleaning it. And the hot issue right now was the rezoning, which was just approved. So they're hopefully going to start. They're already doing the construction. Every time I go by, they're cleaning up the water, which is great. And hopefully that'll lead the way for more housing, more businesses, stuff like that. I think it's a great. I would love to be part of to represent this district, because I feel like it's going to be very happening, in the next 5 years.
Right, and the Gowanus, that area, it's interesting. It's one of the last neighborhoods really to transition heavily to that sort of younger, hipper, because there's so many longtime residents in Gowanus, and there's so much life and business centered around the canal, as screwed up as it is. And if that actually became an attractive place, there amazing things could happen. Free enterprise could flourish, and an entirely new market would open. It's I have family. I have immediate family in Brooklyn. I'm over by the center where the Nets play. But at the same time, you've got a lot of the financial pressures taking place in Brooklyn, and you've got such a diverse community. Speak to that a little bit.
Yeah. So downtown Brooklyn is actually growing. You can't see it from my window, but if you look out my window, you can see the buildings are popping up, the office buildings. They're building one of the tallest buildings in Brooklyn right now. It's a massive skyscraper. I'm a big fan of it. I think it looks pretty cool. And you got your financial center down there, a lot of jobs there. And that's an exciting. It's important that we bring in jobs, and we bring in jobs that are high paying or are relatively good paying, so people can afford to live here. People always talk about wanting to raise minimum wage so people can afford stuff. I think I agree. People should be able to work 40 hours a week and be able to afford a place to live and all the other things like food and travel and stuff like that. But it doesn't make sense to do that by increasing the pay on these jobs that don't produce enough for the business. We should be focusing more on increasing actual good jobs that are productive and, you know, profitable for the business, so people can make this money and the businesses can stay alive.
Excellent. Particularly after 9/11, you had this beginning of a migration of financial service industries related businesses over the bridges. And, you know, and when I mean over the bridges, I'm talking about over the Brooklyn and Manhattan bridges, because there was so much by New York standards, and this is an important emphasis, reasonable real estate over there. Do you find more of your, you know, as a relatively young person, do you find more of your friends and family working in Brooklyn as opposed to making the schlep over to Manhattan?
I mean, I still think that New York City is, you know, as attractive as it's ever been in terms of the job market. But I do know a lot of people who said, you know, I moved to Jersey because it's cheaper to live there. There's more housing. But in terms of being a attractive job market, I don't think that's, ever going to change. I mean, Google is just, they're just bought a new office building and they're going to put a headquarters here. If you want to attract the top talent, New York City is still the place to be. There's just a lot of things that the city has to do to be more accommodative to bring in that top talent.
So talk about, if you will, and how long have you lived in the city, by the way?
I lived in New York for about 10 years.
All right. So you lived there long before COVID, and obviously you've stuck it out. Speak to life before and after COVID and what the municipal response was like. And of course, there was a period of time where the term ground zero, quite tragically, was being associated with New York City again for the first time since 9/11. And we're talking about, of course, the tremendous amount of depth and sheer chaos that was in the city. But as someone who actually lived there, what's your perspective on all of it?
I mean, the thing that hurts me the most is just, you go and you talk to people who own these small businesses, and they've just been through absolute hell the past, 2 years now, going on almost 2 years. And that's really the worst part. I mean, they're trying everything to stay alive, and the city just did such an awful job of getting them access to the PPP money, and they didn't even, even if they didn't do that, they didn't even do basic things like excusing them from property taxes, excusing them from other fees and licenses. But they're staying alive as best they can. We lost about, I think, like 20 to 30% of our small businesses, which really hurts. But even before the pandemic, it's still a fight to operate a small business in New York City with the cost of rent, the bureaucracy of just trying to open a small business. It's not just, hey, here's my papers, I'm a company, I'm going to buy and rent here and run a business. It's a whole scramble, and it just doesn't make sense that we have to do it that way. Like I said, if we want to be an attractive spot for people to come to, we should be making it as easy as possible to attract talent to start businesses, if we want to make a city that thrives for everybody.
And yet you can argue that the sheer weight of government in Manhattan, New York City at large, even dwarfs the state of New York. And we've had a number of candidates from upstate come on. Mr. Creeder, amongst many others, folks from the island. And they talk about an oppressive government. But in New York City, in addition to the layer of New York State government, you've also got agencies like the Port Authority, who have this larger than life presence. You've got New York City government, which seems to want to legislate literally every step, every engagement, every relationship, every business. The question has become more and more prescient as COVID continues to march on, this lurching 2-step forward, 1 step back process. Is it possible to even, and we hate the word govern on this show, we like to use the word steward, but is it possible to even manage to ride herd on New York City? Is it simply too big? Is it too far out of control? Where do you begin in a city that I would say, other than San Francisco, is possibly the most controlled government experiment in the country.
That's a great question. Yeah, New York City is big. It's very complex. And I think the problem is the size of the government. I mean, I get that we're a city and we should operate as one, but we really should be trying to strip the state, or, the state, I use that as a euphemism for the government, down to the bare minimum, because there's 5 boroughs, but there is, I can't even guess, 600 communities, within New York City. Each neighborhood is its own, its own little environment, its own little culture, and we should really not try to control the entire thing, with a blank, a slate of rules for everybody. We should be able to let, people try new things, let, neighborhoods do different things, and, learn and see what works for one neighborhood. But instead, we just try to control everything, down to, what type of business you can start here, what type of housing you can build here. And that's just, it's problematic. And, it doesn't work. It's too conducive to have such a city like this, be so constrained by so many laws and so, I don't want to say, it's oppressive, but not in a way that, like dictatorship is oppressive, but, in terms of, what we should strive to be, it's oppressive.
And yet at the same time, the city, as complex as it is, votes emotionally. I, for one, didn't see Eric Adams coming. He's the Democratic nominee, former police officer who ran essentially on a law and order platform. And that, by the way, that speaks to the atmosphere that I was much more familiar with, which was when Rudy Giuliani ran the second time. Folks forget that he lost to David Dinkins the first time. The second time he ran on pretty much a law and order promise, because the city was, one step removed from Escape from New York, right? That was not seen as a parody. That was seen as New York City. Anyone hasn't seen it, Kurt Russell, watch it. Great flick. I think it's on Netflix. But you take, and I may have my candidates mixed up, but I believe it was Catherine Garcia who had run the city's sanitation and had run a number of city's apartments really well. And yet New Yorkers ultimately responded shockingly to some with a law and order approach to the Democratic primary, as opposed to the defund the police movement, which so many folks thought would carry the day. How do you, again, and now let's get to the, your campaign. How do you campaign in that environment? It's holy cow.
Yeah. Stacey Pressman is our candidate for mayor. She's who I'm going to vote for in November.
Right, absolutely.
If I could vote in the Democratic primary, I would have voted for Catherine Garcia. I thought she was, a good candidate with good ideas. Even though she was a Democrat, I think the problem with her was that she got wrapped up in everything. I think I would call it, what we really saw was the social media kind of pressure. You're on social media and you have all the keyboard warriors, all the young progressives of New York City pushing, and they see they're getting retweets from AOC and all these blue checkmark progressives, and she thought that's what I need to get. But then Eric Adams comes and he wins people who actually show up to vote, who aren't on Twitter, who aren't on social media. They're just normal people who actually show up. And I think so. I see, I'm obviously running against someone, and I see them, and they're part of that kind of progressive big Twitter presence, and they get a lot of retweets. But then you go and you talk to people in the neighborhood, and you're just like, they're like, oh, either that's not how they think. And I really think that's been the issue with progressives, either even at the national level. It's that they're missing that, hey, I'm getting retweets, hey, my article is doing blah blah blah, and I'm on this show and that show. But it's like, people don't, like, you're not really reaching people. You're just reaching people who aren't voting. And in the end of the day, you want to reach the people who are voting, because they're the people who are going to get you elected. And so really, I'm on social media a lot, but the most important thing and what I try to do when I tweet on social media is what I interact with, in my day to day when I meet people in the neighborhood and I talk to people, to show people like, hey, this is what people actually care about. This is what someone said to me. This Twitter world is not real. It's not, how things really are. And,
Right.
that's who I try to speak to.
So New Yorkers actually vote for Eric Adams, whereas the pundits all want to listen to Sean King. Is that a pretty fair statement?
Right. Exactly.
Right.
You can protest in the streets, but if you don't show up to the ballot box, the protest means nothing.
So focusing on your election then, and one of the reasons why I'm looking forward to the event in New Rochelle is I love New York City politics. It's a world unto its own. And folks, if you're not following New York City politics, you're missing, and you're missing some. They put us, the Libertarians, in terms of just the sheer carnage on a day-to-day basis. They put us to shame. But let's talk about your district. I mean, is your district more of the? I'll call it the. And when I say this, I want to be careful because I'm not belittling any jobs, but there's the New York City of policemen, Jakes. That's what they call firemen, right? And by the way, the ultimate hockey match has nothing to do with the Olympics, has nothing to do with the Stanley Cup. It is New York's finest versus New York bravest. You want to see a recreation of a certain movie from the 70s where there's blood on the ice? Yeah, that's it. You Boston folks, you have no idea. But is your district more hipster, or is it more New York City sanitation workers and school teachers and folks who are what they sometimes call pink collar as opposed to white collar and blue collar? What's the makeup of your district, and how are you campaigning to them?
Yeah, so it's mostly, one part, the Park Slope is all people. It's mostly a family neighborhood. You go there, and I'd say it's working professionals. There's a lot of different professions that are represented in my district. It's not a very young, happening district. It's definitely very older and working and families. And down as you go further down in South Slope, Windsor Terrace, Kensington, a little
Right.
south, heading towards south of Prospect Park. Then you get, you start getting a mix of different ethnicities. So it's not a super diverse, but there is some diversity. The district voted for Catherine Garcia primarily. So I guess if you want to guess what they're like, I guess they're kind of moderate Democrats. If you had to put a label on it.
Chuck Schumer lives in your district, right?
Yeah, I've seen Chuck. It was great during the pandemic. There was this clothing store. I think it's called Elsewhere. Maybe that's something else. Elsewhere is a club in Bushwick. Not that I'm trying to plug anything, but something else did outdoor concerts, and they had this. I guess you would call them like a cover wedding band type thing. They did all the hits from the 50s, 60s up to today, and they were playing. And who shows up, pushing his grandson in a cart, in a stroller? Chuck Schumer gets on the mic and he starts singing "New York, New York." I'm not a big Chuck Schumer fan, but that's cool. No, it's fun to see that.
You don't have to be nice here. I loathe Chuck Schumer. Next time you see Chuck Schumer, tell him Pat Ford and Lynn Ulbrich say "F you." Okay, all right. Just say hi for me. All right. I shouldn't be speaking on behalf of Lynn, but say Pat. So there's some schmuck up in Rhode Island named Pat Ford who says, how do you feel about Ross Ulbricht now? Okay, so just saying, and of course,
fair.
All right. It's. And by the way, are you a bagel hole guy, or are you, or do you go elsewhere for bagels?
Oh, I usually just go. In the morning when I'm feeling bagels, I usually just go to the deli next to my work in Williamsburg.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
But it's a good place. Williamsburg is home to the Hasidics, and who makes
the best?
Who does bagels better than the Jews? Nobody.
There you go. So what issues are you campaigning on? What message are you bringing? What libertarian message, should I say, are you bringing to the good people of District 39?
Yeah, so like I said, the hottest issue in the district is the Gowanus Canal and the Gowanus rezoning.
Mm-hmm.
So housing is the biggest issue, I would say, in the district. And my campaign is abolishing zoning. I think there should be absolutely no zoning. Wherever the market deems that housing should be built, people should be able to build, whatever housing, can suitably fit there. I was the old former Manhattan LP, Ilya Schwartzberg, who helped us a lot with the lawsuit that we filed against the state of New York, got me into the zoning issue, and he would always talk about abolishing zoning, and I said, I'm going to run on that. That's going to. He's like, oh, no. You might want to. I was like, no, we need something bold, and abolishing zoning is great. The progressives all have their abolish this, abolish that. I said I need an abolish something, a good slogan. So I went with abolish zoning. New York City. It's kind of simplistic to think that a lot of problems can be solved by abolishing zoning, but I really think that if the city builds more housing, the cost of housing is going to go down. Rents are going to go down, like that. I can't remember his name now, but the rents are too damn high guy. He's right. He's right. Rents are too damn high. We need to build a lot more housing because the job growth has outpaced the housing in the city by like 2 point something to 1. Every new job, we only build 1 unit of housing, which leads to bad things like rent inflation. It leads to people needing 4 or 5 roommates, leads to overcrowding, and overcrowding was a very bad thing that led to a lot of the transmission of COVID in the city. Areas that had a lot of crowding in them, mostly in poor neighborhoods. People got sick because they didn't have anywhere else to go. They were crowded into these houses. One person gets it, boom, everybody gets it. Everyone on their floor gets it. So that's one issue that I'm running on.
Well, and let me just elaborate on it too, because it's a great issue, because it's another example of big government, the nanny state, in their never-ending zeal to help the marginalized end up hurting the marginalized. And I'll again give an example, and you tell me what you think of this. During Superstorm Sandy, where significant parts of the city got devastated by floods. I mean, I still have the image of the tunnel, water bubbling up from the tunnel, at Lower Manhattan. So many people in basement apartments that were illegal, that didn't exist in the minds of the good mayors and burghers of New York, were just devastated. And, we're talking about the working poor. We're talking about a variety of ethnic groups who were using those type of housing as a step into New York City. And so by artificially moving the market towards luxury housing by all sorts of tax incentives and tax breaks and subsidies, it took the market away from its natural progression to build affordable housing by New York City standards. And then ultimately those people were pushed into these basement apartments or these crowded tenements, 21st century tenements, which, a few years later, as you pointed out, got devastated by the Rona. So, it just strikes me that every single time, and New York City is like a petri dish, that government tries to help people, yikes.
Right.
And what are rents like in New York City right now?
They're going up. I mean, they went down a lot during COVID, and people, idiots all said, New York City's dead. No, it's rental market is so hot right now. If you post a listing, I've seen it get 6 applicants in 15 minutes, and it's gone in 30 minutes. I've seen videos of people like lines, like they're going to some hot concert wrapped around just to see an apartment. It's absolutely ridiculous, and the city still thinks this is like a norm. Like, oh yay, people are returning. It's like, yeah, okay, so let's build more housing then. But they just don't seem to. They prefer to stretch it out into these 16-month processes where everybody gets to gripe about how, oh, I don't want a big shiny building in my neighborhood. It's like you live in a city. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
We're going to
no,
build tall buildings.
yeah. Years ago, I was walking up Second Avenue, and never forget this. A New York City police officer was in the only way that could happen in New York City was talking to someone who was leaning out of their second floor apartment. And as I got closer, I heard him say the immortal words, "Ma'am, you moved into an apartment just over a bar. It's gonna get bleeping noisy." And that's New York.
Yeah.
How do you communicate that? I mean, we've talked to so many candidates on the show on the year and a half that it's been on the air, and for example, it's so popular amongst different parts of the country to go door knocking. You got a little thing you put on the door, you knock on the door, they answer the door, you have a conversation, you come outside, you sit on the front lawn, maybe have lemonade. That's not happening on Flatbush Avenue, is it?
No, no. The best way, I mean, the great part about New York City is that, I mean, not so much as it should be. I mean, that's the fourth plank of my platform. Safer streets, bike friendly. I want to create 15-minute neighborhoods because the best way to reach people is in the places that people congregate, which are parks, plazas, stuff like that. And I think that, we should have, not, like people always call me like, I think I want to make driving illegal. Hey, if you want to have a car, that's fine. But the city shouldn't accommodate and make wide open streets. We should be making streets that are accommodating, or not streets, spaces that are accommodating to humans congregating together with their neighbors to eat, to play music and stuff like that. And that's the best place. I mean, if you go to Washington Square Park, you're going to see 6 people who are very passionate about a wide range of things, that 9/11 was an inside job, that aliens are real, that, join the Democratic Socialists of America. They're all there because people come to parks, and that's the best place to reach people in the city.
Yeah, I think every tourist in New York should get away from walking around zombie-like around Times Square and take an Uber or take the subway down to Prospect Park, because if you, and much more so than Central Park. Central Park is this vast greenway, and yeah, there's people hanging out there. Prospect Park to me is as New York as it gets.
Yeah.
Because every 30 or 40 feet, you're going to see another group of people engaged in another. It's you can walk around for days there watching all the different. If you're a people watcher, so
I hate to coin things real New York, but yeah, I would say Prospect Park is
as real.
More real New York than Central Park.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's because Brooklyn is a place where people live. So how do you communicate that, though? How are you reaching out to voters? I know social media is probably got to be a big part of it.
Right.
It's hella expensive to campaign, I would imagine, on radio or TV, or maybe not. What methods are libertarians in New York City doing to reach voters?
I mean, the best way, like I said, you go to where people congregate, which is, parks if you're just doing something on your own, but showing up to protests and meeting people who are passionate about something, and then sharing the libertarian message, with them there. Stacy's going to the UBI march, which is, I support, I'm a Freedman. I guess if we have a gang name, it would be the Freedmanites. He supported the negative income tax. And then Stacy just released her, UBI policy just this week. Just that's the best way to reach people is to get out there and be like, hey, there's libertarians here talking with people and sharing, our points of view. And then that gets people interested. People are like, oh, okay, can I get your card? What's your website? Stuff like that. And then just kind of growing the party through there, I think from my experience, has been our best success.
Excellent. I love protests. And here's the thing, everyone, for all the libertarians say, well, we shouldn't be participating in that might inconvenience people, civil disobedience. I will tell you this. The very reason that a lot of libertarians avoid protests are exactly the reasons we should go.
Right.
There are so many folks who are not libertarians there, but who are clearly in tune politically, in the sense of having being curious, and being able to be reached out to. The presence of us in a protest will get us in front of 10 times the number of non-libertarians than, say, a socialist Democrat. And all of a sudden, we're part of the argument. We're part of the conversation. Right. I'm going to go back in time to a distant galaxy and talk about something called the protest in Tompkins Square Park and a place called Christadora House. I don't know if you've ever even heard of it. It was 1988.
Square Park.
Yeah, it was 1988, and that's when the term "die yuppie scum" was invented. And that was really one of the first in generations big protests against the beginnings. The real roots of the housing crisis are in rent control, and what that did to the rental market. Is there still a cry for it to go back to rent control? You hear that issue come up?
Of course, yeah. Especially now. I mean, the eviction moratorium, the cancel rent, all that is just, and that's, I'm not in support of the rent control for anything, because like I mean, I'm an Austrian economics guy. If you try to adjust, if you try to affect a price on anything, it's not going to work the way that you want it to. And
no, it doesn't.
You are correct. Rent controlled apartments, the people who own them, they're losing money, and it's not, I mean, you can say, oh, well, who cares? Boo landlords. It's like, I mean, he can't fix up the other apartments and make them any nicer because he's losing money on this one. And, it just has a negative effect on the overall rental market. And I think if you want to control rents, the best way to, or not control rents, but to lower rents, it's build more housing and abolish zoning, which I have to say.
How is, again, this is New York City, the bluest of the bluest of the blue of the blue. How receptive are folks, based on, if nothing else, a desperation factor, to other solutions or other ideas at this moment politically in New York City?
How very receptive. And they're very willing to listen, and there's definitely a lot of common ground that we have with progressives, more so than Democrats. But the thing is that we all have the same mission. We all have the same goal. We want less police brutality. We want less bad government. But the thing is, they think that the progressives think that all we need is a more diverse group of government officials, and that will solve our problems. And we say no, we need less government, and we want the same things you do, but we want to do it through people having the freedom to do these things. The same people that you claim that you're fighting for, but you still want to control them. But you think I want to control them for their good. These people are after them. Like the people in power now are only thinking about themselves, but I'm going to be in power and in control and controlling people, but I'm going to do it for their best interest. And we all know how anybody who's ever been, this is for your best interest, has turned out. Yeah. But they're definitely receptive, but I don't know what it is. There's just so many people. There's this one guy in my district, great guy. He's very big on housing, and we were talking, he just goes, I just can't vote for Libertarian. I'm like, and it just drives me insane. And I heard, when I was out campaigning for Joe, I heard the same thing. We talk, but we just can't let Trump win. I'm just like, oh my God. Like, it just drives me crazy.
No, we ran into the same thing here in New England. I mean, Brooklyn is often Rhode Island is often referred to as North Jersey. Imagine that, Gene Poole. But it was the same thing. You've got a voter base that's so polarized and so afraid of the other that the seminal challenge is getting them to even consider that other options might exist. Brooklyn LP, obviously, it's fascinating to me. I went to a certain notorious debate a few years back at a club in Lower Manhattan, and I got to meet for the first hand members of the Brooklyn and the Manhattan LP, and each borough has literally got its own affiliate, doesn't it?
Right. Yep. And we all
So-
kind of, I mean, there's some things that we agree on, but I mean, if you want to, like I said, New York City is, I mean, I said 600 communities, so I'll stick with it. It's 600 communities, even things that, the Queens LP agree on. Sometimes the Brooklyn LP is like, oh, I'm not quite sure. Staten Island's like, yeah, I'm not quite sure about that either. I think this. But, we all agree that the city needs, less government and, more freedom for everyone.
Any events coming up or debates, or how is it breaking down in terms of the contest, the actual physical contest? And John Gapso, I think, is going to bring up on screen in just a moment or so the competition. It's a 3-way race, correct?
I mean, that's what I've been told, but this other person, Brett, not ran into him. I don't know who he is. I've never met anybody who knows who he is, but I guess if you as other people, they might not know who I am either. Yeah, my opponent, a Democrat, Working Families Party, progressive. She's just falls. This used to be De Blasio's district, and then
didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, and then the guy who took over now, I don't like to say their names because I don't like to give them any
absolutely
publicity. Just virtue signaling. Panderer. I'll say that his last name ironically rhymes with the word pander. And my opponent is, exactly the same, type of thing, it's probably just going to be, again, all talk, no walk,
a lot of identity politics.
Yeah.
A lot of yeah.
I've read the policies and they're all just like, we need to create a community, we need to create these committees. And I'm just like, just do something. Like, stop creating these, like, we need to study and look into this. It's just like, I'll be happy if you do the wrong thing as long as you at least do something instead of just like creating crap. And that adds to the bureaucracy.
And there is bureaucracy between community boards. Folks will always point to their home state or their home city as being the most corrupt. There is nothing. I don't know. I know I kept saying the same thing all night. There is, folks, listen, it's the basic model, except you got 10 levels of it. The first thing is you have a community board. They come up with an idea. Then once you've got that basic idea, the next most important thing is coming up with a really good acronym, right? So you've got to come up with an acronym, which is increasingly hard because most of the good acronyms have been taken in New York City. Then you have a march, and then you have a craft fair, and then you have a website. And that's pretty much the life cycle of New York City politics, if I have it correctly.
You have your community boards, you got your nonprofit organizations, you have your bureaucracy. There's so many different layers that make it impossible to get anything done because it's like, we gotta speak to this team and we gotta do this, and then nothing gets done. I'm part of my local mutual aid group, and it's awesome. Super libertarian. The people in there aren't libertarian themselves, but what we're doing is super libertarian. We're just helping people in the community. We're bypassing government. We're collecting money. We're going out. We just did a pack drive. We have a free store that is free, and people in the community can come to it and grab whatever they need. We're giving away food to people in the community. We're doing free grocery deliveries to people who didn't want to leave their apartments during COVID. We did a toy drive. And it's just like, if the government tries to do this, it would take them 6 months to be like, well, first, which neighborhood do we want to target? And then, blah, blah, blah. And then, they contract with some food distributor and end up spending $6,000 to get, a pack of hot dogs and some buns.
Right. So this mutual aid society, were you involved in its formation, or are you just become a part of it?
I probably joined like 3 or 4 months into their creation. But a lot of them sprung up during COVID as a response, and I think it's absolutely awesome. The candidate, Devin Balkine, who's running for public advocate, is actually the creator of the mutual aid website it's just basic, like an open source website that shows every neighborhood and where their mutual aid organization is and stuff like that. And I think, Devin's super smart. He was the former BKLP, and he kind of introduced me a lot to libertarianism from a city perspective, because a lot of people are like, well, you live in New York City, like, how can you be a libertarian? And it's like, there's a lot of ideals that we can, instill and represent in the city that are still libertarian, even though we're in a big city. We don't have to live, in Wyoming and places where, libertarians are also doing well. You can still be libertarian and live in a big city.
Well, great stuff. A real adventure. How many in the past, roughly, how many voters does it take to win? Do you have a concept, an idea of that?
23,000.
Wow.
So I think the voter turnout's some pathetic, paltry, like 25%, which is also, yeah. And again, that's in New York City, is that we have crap candidates that people don't show up for because they know they're crap. Now, they don't inspire anybody, but then they get elected and then they have all this power. And it's just like, it's such like a catch-22 for New Yorkers. It's like, well, either you don't show up and vote for these idiots, or you don't, or you vote and you have to vote for an idiot. And that, hey, you can say libertarians don't stand a chance in New York City, but, at least give them, a better candidate. And then, slowly people will be like, oh, I remember that there's libertarian, or, oh, I have absolutely, what's the libertarian? And then they look into it. At least they see it on the ballot. And that's what's important.
And I want to put it into perspective. By the way, we always end the show with my favorite segment, which is what we call shameless self-promotion. But I just want to throw it into perspective. The annual budget for the city of New York, and God only knows how many quasi-governmental agencies are outside of this, how many, Port Authority or authority-like organizations or NGO are outside of it. But the actual budget for the city of New York is in excess of $88 billion. Holy cow.
Well, the approved budget for this coming year is $100 billion.
Excellent. Because why stop there, right?
In 8 years, de Blasio increased the budget by $40 billion.
He's $40 billion. Come on, dude. Right. Why not 45? All right. I saw a meme yesterday. You've probably all seen it at some point that said, well, no one's paid their student loans in 2 years and the banks haven't collapsed yet. So let's just keep not paying them. What the hell?
Right.
Nothing matters. It's, anyhow, listen, thank you for joining us tonight. You've been a great sport and hopefully I've given you some ammunition to tease folks from New England and Boston in particular. I haven't seen the Yankees score today. I probably shouldn't ask.
8-3. They're winning. Bottom
Excellent.
7. Looks like the Red Sox are mounting a comeback, though.
All right. Well, listen. As far as I'm concerned, the World Series should be readjusted. It should be this simple. The winners in the playoffs of the American League should play the winners of the National League, and then they should play the winners of the playoff between the New York Mets and the New York Yankees. We would just solve all the problems. And if we could just move, the Baseball Hall of Fame down to Yankee Stadium, where most of the stuff in the Baseball Hall of Fame happened anyway, then just think of the tourist attraction, okay?
I'll put that on my platform tonight.
Yeah, exactly.
I will bring the Hall of Fame here.
Yeah. Well, really, most of it happened at Yankee Stadium, right? So what's
I don't care if I have to do an Ocean's 11 and steal all the stuff in the Hall of Fame and bring it myself.
There you go. Well, again, shameless self-promotion. How can folks contribute to your campaign? And again, we say this every week, but an opportunity, an investment in your campaign is literally an investment in bringing peace to Mordor. I'm not sure if there's a more apt analogy than Soviet workers' paradise of New York than Mordor. But in terms of personal liberties, we didn't even get a chance to get into, the statist abrogation of fundamental human rights that took place during the Rona. But it's such an amazing opportunity because, the folks in Queens, the folks in Brooklyn, the folks, you're bringing legitimate, serious candidates who are young people who are working it. All right. Like never before. And Stacey's a wonderful, we've had her on the show. She's great. So putting some money into your campaign just amplifies a message to a city where if we're successful at any level can literally change the country, because again, New York City does run the country. But how can folks reach out to you? How can they find you?
You can donate on votematthewmorgan.nyc. NYC. That's my campaign website. That's the best place to donate. What I'm doing in my campaign is, like I said, I'm a small campaign, so I don't have a lot of money to do big, parties or whatever the other candidates are doing. So I'm mostly just going around the community trying to do good things, cleaning up and buying things like, I'm planning on buying basketball nets for the local park that is in a kind of poor community that doesn't have them. So that's the best place if you want to donate to me. I'm all about action over promises with this campaign. I want to be out there. I want people to see me in the community actually doing stuff instead of just waving and kissing babies. The best place to interact with me, if you like my ideas or if you have any suggestions or you want to call me an idiot, is on Twitter, Vote Morgan 39. I'm on Instagram at Vote Matthew Morgan. I'm on Facebook at Vote Matthew Morgan. On TikTok, I've made a couple TikToks at Vote Matthew Morgan. So that's my shameless self-promotion.
Excellent. Will you be in New Rochelle tomorrow night by chance?
I will not. I'm a Rotarian. I'm part of Rotary International, and we have a fishing trip fundraiser. So I feel bad that I'm going to be having fun, but I'm also raising money for good cause.
No, and you know what? I'll leave with this thought. It's clear that you're invested heavily in the community, and Rotary is a wonderful example of that. It's a great organization nationwide. Libertarians should really look to get involved in that because there's so much good that comes out of Rotary, and it's probably a great untapped resource nationally because there's some very strong chapters out there. Mm-hmm. You're clearly invested in the community in the sense of living a libertarian life, and living a libertarian life includes, and I know some people are uncomfortable with this, but ultimately, if we are going to preach the elimination of government services and preach that private charity will replace those government services, as we should, then it is up to us and it is incumbent upon us to lead by example. And again, you're going to meet and see a slice of life which may actually ennoble you, realize that there is much work to be done, and again, be that group of libertarians who becomes associated with action as you have in your community, as opposed to, well, I think the terms this year are virtue signaling and pearl clutching, and they're both very apt and they're both evocative of, obviously I've spent a fair amount of time in Brooklyn. I think you can tell, but I think if anyone in the city heard this conversation, they know exactly who we're talking about. All right. And Upper East Side of Manhattan, Park Slope, more buck for your Chuck Schumer. Please. And I'm serious about that. If you could at least once, sometime during this campaign, personally insult him on my behalf, it would make me very, very, you would complete me. Okay. You would be the wind beneath my wings. So and I want it to be really, I want eye contact. I want it to be as polite, but as brutal as you could. And then throw in hey, nice deal this week with the immigration and how, and helping these poor people from Haiti. Great. Aren't we excited? For the love of God, how is it there's times when I think all of us wake up and we look at these people and we say, how do we lose to these people? My God. I mean, what do you say? In a community like Brooklyn, where you've got such a strong Jamaican and Haitian population, what are these people thinking when they see these actual videos of how their countrymen are treated when they're on the rebound from some of America's terrible foreign policy decisions? I congratulations on your campaign. It's the best way I can say this is that you make us better as a organization, as a philosophy, as a movement by doing what you're doing almost single-handedly because of the challenges of campaigning and working in such a difficult environment. And we need to follow your example. We need to go where we're not well known. We may be disliked in some circles, and we need to educate people as you've done by example and behavior. And that's how we change the world.
Definitely.
Fair enough?
Agreed.
Fair enough. I hope we meet soon.
Yes, definitely.
And we can have bagels. And yes, I toast my bagels. Sorry.
Me too.
There you go. All right. There's a couple of places on 7th Avenue that I've come to know and love. Folks, thank you again for joining us. This will be, we've shared it all over the place. It'll be in perpetuity. It'll be on the Libertarian Party Facebook page, the LPTV Facebook page, which we'd love it if you took a moment and liked, as well as a number of other Facebook pages. I share it to about 30 states pages. Take a moment, listen to the entire conversation. And we are notorious for our what I call short-term attention span theater libertarians. We're all just as bad. But take a moment, listen to what's being done here, and find a way to do the same thing that our friend here is doing nationally. Folks, you've been listening to Candidates Corner on LPTV, a production of the Libertarian Party and Libertarian National Committee. Whitney Bilyeu serving as chair. John Gapso, as always, has been on the big board, helping us with the video and the fun graphics and a little slice of New York City. My name is Pat Ford. I'm your host every Friday night. Monday night, we'll be back again, hopefully this week with a live affiliates show. It's hammer time. It's time to move. It's go time, show time, whatever cliche that you want to employ. The next few months, the American body politic will be paying attention. And it's our opportunity to shine. Everyone you speak to, everyone you work alongside of. Now, as always, I'm going to invoke Larry Sharpe in a moment like this. And I'll be seeing him tomorrow night. Larry Sharpe made a speech to the Rhode Island Libertarian Party a few years ago, which literally changed how I talk about the movement with people. And if you haven't heard it, just go up to him and ask him about planting a seed, not having to win an argument, but simply having a conversation with people and leaving them with the concept, the general concept of what our philosophy is, and not feeling like you have to belittle them, not feeling like you have to argue with them, not feeling like you have to condescend to them. None of that. Just simply plant the seed, and we can change the world. Have a great night. We'll see you Monday night. Thank you.